So Mojang really wanted the snapshot to be about the bundle, but it's too bad they pissed off the entire Redstone community instead. Lots of things have changed. The changelog is very long, and it covers things like redstone changes, minecart changes, baby animals, and a lot of stuff. But I only care about the redstone changes and the minecart changes, and I've organized them from least bad to most bad. So let's start with the least bad. Redstone torches got a texture change. I like it. It looks very nice. I think this is just way better than the old texture. And yeah, not much else to say. Good job, good new texture, very cool. And now we have the first big change, which is Mojang's attempt to kind of get rid of locationality and directionality by adding some randomness. So as you can see, we have two pistons facing towards each other. If I hit the left lever, this left piston will always be the one that fires. If I hit the right lever, the right piston will always fire. If I hit the middle, then it will be random. You see, before this, redstone behaved in two pretty weird and niche ways. It was both directional and locational. So here are kind of two basic examples of it. If I hit this lever over here, as you can see, all the green pistons extend, but all the red pistons kind of get stuck in place. But it is consistent the entire time, despite both of these being activated at the same time. So yeah, this is directionality, which means depending on the direction that the redstone is facing, it will behave in a different way. Locationality is a little bit different and a little bit more complicated. So as you can see, we have a bunch of the same circuit, even facing the same direction, but some of them don't work, like this red one, and some of them do work, like this green one, or this green one, or this broken red one again, and this green one that does work. See, it's kind of like picking between two evils. Your redstone can either be random across space, or it can be random across time. But let's talk about this randomness across time because you can somewhat control it. So here we have another example with two pistons and some honey blocks. If I flick this lever, this piston will be the one that extends, like this. And if I flick this lever, this one will be the one that extends because it's in line with that lever. And if I activate it from the top, then it's random again. But for some reason, if you put the lever here, then only this one activates, which it should be both be random, right? Because it's equidistant from this lever. I don't know. Again, we have another example. We have 4 pistons this time, and then under these blocks we have repeaters pointing into the redstone dust. So, you know, from the repeaters, it kind of makes sense. Depending on what lever you flick, it will be that corresponding piston, even though it's the same piece of redstone being activated. But if we activate it from the corners again, like this with these levers, then for some reason, these pistons take priority, the ones facing north and south, and not these east and west pistons. I don't know, it's a little bit weird. But their attempt to fix locationality does fix one of Minecraft's oldest problems. Before, if you had a line of pistons like this with a line of redstone dust, sometimes when you deactivate it, there'd be 1 or 2 that would stick out. But now they will all extend and retract very nicely. Okay, so what do all these randomness changes really mean? Theoretically, this should only affect builds that were already locational, which in my opinion kind of had bad wiring to begin with if you were locational. But again, it depends. Would you rather have your contraption be random across space or random across time? Let's say you're building a piston door and you build it once in the correct location, let's just say it's locational, but it works 100% of the time. If you build it in a separate location, it doesn't work, you instantly know that it's locational. But by introducing some randomness, there's a little bit of unknown variables when debugging. Next up, we have minecarts. You've probably seen these all over Twitter. Minecarts got a huge rework. I mean, look at this. They arch, they fly, look at that. And there's also a new game rule, which is minecart max speed. By default, it is set to 8 blocks a second, and the maximum is 1,000 blocks a second. I have it set to 1,000 because it's way more fun that way. And you've probably seen these all over the internet where you have minecarts spinning in a circle like this, and then you switch a rail onto a ramp, and then they get yeeted into the sky. It's beautiful. It truly is beautiful. This stuff is cool. I think this stuff is pretty neat. What's a little bit more controversial though is the stuff they've changed with minecart stacking and the way minecarts snap to rails and get aligned. So for example, before you used to be able to place a bunch of minecarts onto one single rail. As you can see, it looks like I'm placing a bunch of minecarts on this rail, but it's only one. Same with dispensers. This is filled with minecarts. You can dispense your first minecart onto the rail, but if you dispense more, then they just spit out into the ground not good. Minecart stacking being removed will break a lot of stuff, especially recent storage tech stuff, which uses a lot of stacked minecart chests and hoppers and that kind of stuff. The next thing that was changed was the way minecarts kind of align themselves to rails. If you had kind of a curved rail setup like this, and you put a minecart on it, before it would kind of be on a diagonal and would clip between these two blocks diagonally, and that would allow things like piston bolts to be possible. But now, they kind of snap to the center of the block. So if you try to do an alignment setup like this, where you have a fence gate, this minecart would go up to the fence gate, but as you can see, it kind of moved backwards. So it's a lot harder to align things the way you want, which is really bad for certain things. And also, as of right now, they're really buggy. If I just place a minecart going into some powdered snow like this, then I will be flung hundreds of blocks into the air. I don't know why, it's really fun, but obviously this is not intended behavior. So my take on the new minecart changes, I'm not the biggest cartstone kind of guy, but I know someone who is, Inspector Talon. He also made a video covering all the cart changes way more in depth and also covered the good things, the bad things, and just has way more suggestions for improvements. So I highly suggest you check out that video. But yeah, it's just a completely new system that needs a little bit of tweaks, and it might be good, it might not. And now we've come to the last thing, the red thing, the thing that all the Redstoners are pissed off about. You would think it would be the random dust, you know, dust being random instead of locational, but this is probably the worst thing in the snapshot. And to really understand why this is such a detrimental change, we kind of need to go over how QC works. So QC is a property that applies to pistons, sticky pistons, droppers, and dispensers, where if you power them diagonally or one block above like this, and then you give them a block update, they will power. And then if you unpower it like this, and then give it a block update, it will depower. Now, the biggest reason why QC is super useful is not because it detects block updates, but because it lets you power components from places that you otherwise shouldn't, which makes Redstone a lot more flexible. For example, this repeater is QCing this piston, but also giving it an update. Same with this comparator, same with this torch, and same with these observers. And here are the examples that you might see famously in like a bunch of piston doors, pistons updating other pistons like this, same with note blocks, and even newer stuff like the copper bulb. Redstone dust used to be on that list, but now, redstone dust does not give as many block updates as it used to, which means setup like this won't power this piston anymore. Or setups like this, or setups like this, or setups like this, which is a big thing because a ton of piston doors and a lot of other contraptions have setups where you have a transparent block going up to a piston with redstone going into it, or a transparent block on top of a piston with redstone running on top of it. In fact, here's an example of one of my 4x4s that will probably break because of this change. Or even this selector array with all these droppers being powered by slabs. Again, this will also break. Or if you want an even more common example, slab towers. This just doesn't work anymore because these pistons aren't being updated by the redstone dust. You kind of need to force an updater in between these pistons. So now these pistons will extend, but not this one because there's no block updates. It's really weird. And again, it's even weirder, they just don't give enough updates to realize that they've been powered, so you can just like turn off redstone dust like this, which is really cursed. Now there is a solution for some of these edge cases, but not all of them, which is the copper bulb. If you don't know, the copper bulb is actually a transparent block. As you can see, if I place a repeater going into this copper bulb and flick it, this redstone dust actually won't get powered, nor will that piston, because it's a transparent block. But you saw that this little middle bit turns red, that actually gives a block update. So that means it's a transparent updater, which you could use to replace things like basic slab towers like this. So it kind of works, but again, it doesn't work for everything, because sometimes you want an immovable transparent block like a hopper, or sometimes you just want to run an observer line underneath your redstone like this. So for example, we have an observer line that both powers that piston like that, but can also serve as a transparent block that powers this piston, but yeah, that just doesn't work anymore. And the other problem with copper bulbs is since it relies on them being powered to actually give an update, if you have a neighboring redstone line that's just a little bit too close to this, and let's say powers this copper bulb right here, well, now not all of your pistons will actually extend properly because this copper bulb no longer gives an update when this redstone line gets activated. If they apply this logic where they get rid of unnecessary updates from redstone components, then this repeater setup won't work, or this comparator setup, or this torch setup, or this observer setup, which I'm missing, oh my god, this observer setup, or this observer setup, or if they're gonna go really hardcore, they might get rid of these. Honestly, I don't think these three they'll get rid of. These are probably very safe. But this could get patched, and this is a massive problem if it does, because so many redstone contraptions have setups like this that power components. See, the thing you need to know about QC is that getting rid of QC outright is not really the only way you can get rid of QC. If you get rid of all the redstone components giving block updates, that essentially gets rid of QC, because that is the part that gets used the most. Now, this is Editor Crafty Masterman kind of interjecting. I'm not saying Mojang will do this anytime soon, or at all. I'm just saying that if they try to follow the same logic as Redstone does to all the other components, then that will be very bad. So what has the response from Mojang and the rest of the Minecraft community been? Well, it's kind of been one of three things, or maybe they just say all three of these things. The first thing is just fix your stuff, which is a crazy thing to say because a lot of stuff just isn't possible anymore, especially with this last dust change. This last dust change, I need to reiterate, is way more of a problem than all of these other things combined. But just telling a redstoner to fix your stuff is kind of being ignorant at the larger problem at hand. The second response I've seen is, but it makes redstone easier, more people will do it now, which is said by every casual every single time Mojang makes an update to redstone. If you guys remember the skulk sensor, a lot of people also said that now, oh my god, this makes wireless redstone so easy, this is gonna bring so many new redstoners to redstone. It in fact did not bring so many new redstoners to redstone. The thing that brings new redstoners to redstone is content creators. There's literal proof of that. If you've seen MattBatWing's Logical Redstone series, just because he made that and taught people redstone, a lot of people that otherwise would have never done redstone have done redstone, like RecRap or Breadsy. It's creators, it's redstoners that teach other redstoners that bring new redstoners into redstone, not random component changes from Mojang. And the last response that I've seen floating around Twitter and Reddit and Discords and everything is Mojang knows better. I'm gonna keep this pretty short and blunt. They don't. They don't know better, and that's why feedback for things like this is so important. So this is kind of like a call to action to, I guess, anyone who works at Mojang that may be watching this. Listen to the feedback that redstoners have this time. Let's not repeat history with the copper bulb and just end with utter disappointment. Watch Inspector Talon's video on all those minecart changes. Pay attention to all those piston door people that have been posting videos about all of their broken doors because of the lack of redstone dust updates. Just listen. Just like, the chronically redstone people do know a little more about redstone. Cause that's like all we do.